Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video from Gone Legends. In today's video, we'll be highlighting American celebrities who passed away today, and in recent days, along with other notable individuals from around the world. Before we proceed, we kindly ask for your support. If you find these tributes meaningful, please take a moment to like this video. It truly means a lot to us. Thank you for being here. And now, let's begin. 1.
On February 25, 2026, the world said goodbye to Bobby J. Brown, who passed away at the age of 62 due to smoke inhalation following a tragic residential fire. His sudden death left a quiet ache in the hearts of those who had admired his steady, powerful presence on screen. Born in 1963 in the United States, Brown built a respected career as a character known for his authenticity and emotional depth. He became widely recognized for his appearances in acclaimed television dramas such as The Wire and later We Own This City, where his performances carried a raw realism that resonated deeply with audiences. Unlike many who chase fame, Brown pursued truth in his roles. He portrayed flawed, complicated men with humanity, allowing viewers to see both strength and vulnerability intertwined. His early life was shaped by perseverance, and that resilience translated into every character he embodied. Directors valued his quiet discipline, his ability to command a scene without spectacle. Though he never sought the spotlight for himself, his work spoke loudly. In remembering Bobby J. Brown, we remember an artist who understood that acting was not about performance alone, but about revealing the soul beneath the surface. His legacy lives on in the stories he helped tell and in the emotional honesty he brought to every frame.
2.
On February 26, 2026, Pepito Rodriguez passed away at the age of 83. While the specific cause of his death was not publicly detailed, his departure marked the end of an era in Philippine cinema. Born in 1942 in the Philippines, Rodriguez grew into one of the country's beloved character actors, dedicating decades of his life to film and television. From humble beginnings, he rose through the vibrant Filipino entertainment industry with dedication and quiet determination. His performances often reflected the heart of everyday Filipino life, honest, heartfelt, and deeply relatable. Audiences saw in him a reflection of fathers, uncles, neighbors, the familiar faces of community and culture. He was not merely acting. He was preserving stories rooted in tradition and resilience. Over the years, Rodriguez became a respected figure among peers, admired for his professionalism and warmth. His career spanned generations, allowing him to witness the transformation of Philippine cinema while remaining a steady presence within it. His legacy is not measured only by awards or recognition, but by the emotional imprint he left on viewers who grew up watching him. Pepito Rodriguez remains a symbol of dedication to craft and cultural storytelling, a gentle force whose memory continues to shine within Filipino entertainment history.
3.
On February 26, 2026, Devonta Lee tragically passed away at the young age of 26 after a courageous battle with osteosarcoma, a rare and aggressive form of bone cancer. Born in 1999 in Louisiana, United States, Lee was widely known as a gifted American football wide receiver. From his high school days, his athletic talent was undeniable. At Amite High School, he became a standout player, earning national attention and eventually committing to Louisiana State University. As part of the LSU Tigers, he contributed during their celebrated championship era, showing not only skill but determination and team spirit. However, in 2022, his life took a heartbreaking turn when he was diagnosed with cancer. What followed was a battle far more demanding than any football game. He endured surgeries, treatments, and painful recoveries with extraordinary courage. In a moment that inspired many, Lee was declared cancer-free and briefly returned to the field, symbolizing hope and resilience. Yet the disease returned, and despite his strength, it ultimately claimed his life. Devonta Lee's legacy extends beyond sports statistics. He became a symbol of bravery for young athletes everywhere, proving that true strength is revealed not just in victory, but in how one faces adversity. His story continues to inspire courage and determination.
4.
On February 25, 2026, Natalia Klimova passed away at the age of 87. Though the specific cause of her death was not widely publicized, her passing marked the loss of one of Russian cinema's most graceful figures. Born in 1938 in Moscow, Russia, Klimova trained at the prestigious Moscow Art Theater School, graduating in the early 1960s. Her talent quickly set her apart in Soviet film and theater. She became known for her roles in films such as The Snow Queen and The Hyperboloid of Engineer Garin, performances that blended elegance with emotional intensity. Klimova possessed a refined screen presence, often portraying intelligent and complex women during a transformative era in Soviet cinema. Her early life in post-war Russia shaped her disciplined approach to acting, and she remained devoted to her craft for decades. Audiences admired her ability to balance vulnerability and strength, making her characters feel timeless. Beyond acting, she contributed to the cultural fabric of Russian performing arts, mentoring younger talents and supporting theatrical institutions. Natalia Klimova leaves behind a cinematic legacy rooted in dedication and artistry. Her performances continue to live within classic Russian film archives, reminding future generations of her profound contribution to storytelling.
5.
On February 24, 2026, Ruben Castillo died at the age of 68 after a battle with cancer. Born in 1957 in Lubbock, Texas, United States, Castillo rose to prominence as a professional boxer during one of the sport's most competitive eras. Turning professional in his teenage years, he quickly built an impressive undefeated streak, earning respect within the boxing world for his discipline and technical skill. Castillo faced legendary opponents such as Alexis Arguello and Julio Cesar Chavez, stepping into the ring with fearless determination. Though he never secured a world title, his performances against champions cemented his reputation as a formidable contender. Outside the ring, Castillo later transitioned into broadcasting, offering expert analysis drawn from first-hand experience. He became a respected voice in boxing commentary, admired for his insight and honesty. His early life was shaped by hard work and perseverance, values that defined both his athletic and professional career. Ruben Castillo's legacy is one of resilience. He represented the spirit of a true fighter, not only in the ring but in life. Even after his passing, the boxing community remembers him as a competitor who never backed down, a man whose courage continues to inspire aspiring athletes around the world.
6.
On February 24, 2026, Lauren Ann Chapin passed away at the age of 80 after a long and difficult battle with cancer. Her death marked the closing of a chapter that began in the golden age of American television and stretched across decades of resilience, faith, and reinvention. Born on May 23, 1945 in Los Angeles, California, Chapin became one of America's most beloved child stars when she portrayed Kathy Kitten Anderson on the iconic sitcom Father Knows Best. At a time when television was shaping the identity of post-war America, her bright smile and natural innocence made her feel like a daughter in millions of homes. She won multiple awards for her performance, becoming a symbol of wholesome family entertainment during the 1950s. Yet life beyond the studio lights was far more complicated. Like many child actors, she struggled with the transition to adulthood and faced personal hardships that tested her strength. But Lauren Chapin refused to be defined by struggle alone. She later shared her story openly, writing about her journey, speaking publicly about recovery, and helping others who had faced similar challenges. Her life became not just a tale of early fame, but of redemption and courage. Even as cancer slowly weakened her body, her spirit remained unbroken. Today, she is remembered not only as a child star of classic television, but as a woman who fought to reclaim her life and used her voice to uplift others long after the cameras stopped rolling.
7.
On February 24, 2026, Irina Borisovna Shevchuk died at the age of 74 after battling brain lymphoma, a severe and aggressive cancer that affects the central nervous system. Her passing was deeply felt across Russia and the broader film community that had admired her quiet yet powerful presence for decades. Born on October 6, 1951, in Murmansk, Russia, Shevchuk rose to prominence during the Soviet era of cinema. After graduating from the prestigious VGIC Film School, she quickly established herself as an actress of remarkable emotional control and depth. She gained widespread recognition for her role in The Dons, Hear Her Quiet, a war drama that became one of the defining films of its time, and later appeared in White Bim Black Ear, another culturally significant production. Shevchuk specialized in portraying strong, thoughtful women characters who reflected resilience, vulnerability, and moral strength. Beyond acting, she devoted herself to supporting the arts community, serving in leadership positions that helped nurture young filmmakers and preserve Russian cinematic tradition. Even as illness quietly advanced, she remained dignified and private about her struggle. Her legacy lies not only in the films she left behind, but in the generations of artists she encouraged. Irina Shevchuk will be remembered as an actress who brought intelligence and grace to the screen, and whose influence continues to echo through Russian cinema.
8.
On February 23, 2026, Robert Reed Carradine passed away at the age of 71, and his death was ruled a suicide following a long battle with bipolar disorder. His passing sent shockwaves through Hollywood, reminding many of the unseen struggles that can exist behind public success. Born on March 24, 1954, in Los Angeles, California, Carradine was part of the legendary Carradine acting family, yet he built a career distinctly his own. He became internationally famous for his role as Louis Skolnick in the comedy film Revenge of the Nerds, a character that redefined the cinematic underdog and resonated with audiences who felt overlooked or underestimated. Later, he introduced himself to a younger generation as the kind-hearted father on Disney's Lizzie McGuire, where his warmth and humor made him a comforting figure on screen. Throughout his career, Carradine balanced comedic brilliance with emotional nuance. However, behind the scenes, he faced significant mental health challenges, speaking at times about the complexity of living with bipolar disorder. His death has reignited conversations about mental health awareness and the importance of seeking support. Robert Carradine's legacy is one of laughter, vulnerability, and authenticity. He gave audiences characters who felt real and relatable, and his work continues to bring joy, even as his story ends in sorrow. His life reminds us to look beyond appearances and to approach others with compassion.
9.
On February 23, 2026, Sandra Lee died peacefully in New York City at the age of 97 from natural causes. Her nearly century-long life was devoted to the performing arts, and her passing marked the farewell of one of Broadway's enduring pioneers. Born on September 30, 1928, in Newark, New Jersey, Lee trained as a dancer before transitioning into theater, where she found her true calling. She became part of Broadway's golden era, originating the role of Tiger Lily in Peter Pan and later appearing as Minnie Fay in the original production of Hello, Dolly. Her performances were filled with vibrant energy, discipline, and unmistakable stage presence. But Lee's influence extended far beyond her own performances. She was also a mentor, teacher, and author, sharing her experiences and guiding aspiring performers with honesty and passion. Even in her later years, she remained connected to the theater community, embodying a lifelong devotion to art. Her memoir revealed a woman who lived boldly, embracing both triumph and controversy with fearless openness. Sandra Lee's death from natural causes closes a remarkable chapter in American theater history. Yet her legacy remains alive in every revival of the musicals she helped define and in every performer inspired by her dedication. She lived long, she performed brilliantly, and she leaves behind a stage that still echoes with her spirit.
10.
Hugh Michael Jackman was born on October 12, 1968, into what seemed like an ordinary family. But ordinary lives can carry extraordinary fractures. When Hugh was only 8 years old, his mother, Grace McNeil, made the painful decision to leave Australia and return to England, leaving Hugh and his siblings in the care of their father. There was no dramatic explosion, No screaming scene from a movie, just a quiet departure that echoed loudly inside a child's heart. For years, Hugh believed she would come back. Children often rewrite reality to make pain survivable. He waited. He hoped. He imagined, but the silence stretched on, and that waiting slowly transformed into something heavier. His father, Christopher Jackman, stepped into the role of both parents with determination and discipline. He was a practical man, a man of structure and responsibility, and he raised his children with strength rather than sentiment. There was love in that household, but it was not always spoken. It was shown through hard work and consistency. Hugh learned early that life would not hand him reassurance. If he wanted stability, he would have to build it himself. The absence of his mother carved a hollow space inside him. Yet instead of filling it with resentment, he filled it with ambition. That emotional complexity, the mixture of vulnerability and resilience, would later become the secret force behind his most powerful performances. As a teenager, Hugh appeared confident and energetic. He was athletic, tall, charismatic, excelling in rugby and outdoor adventures. But beneath that confident exterior lived a young man wrestling with quiet questions about belonging and identity. He has admitted in interviews that part of his drive came from a desire to prove himself, to show the world and perhaps unconsciously, his mother that he was worthy of staying for. That hunger to prove his value became a defining trait. It pushed him academically, socially, physically. It also planted the seed of an unrelenting work ethic. When he entered university, acting was not yet a lifelong dream. He studied communications at the University of Technology, Sydney, following a safer, more predictable path. But during a drama class in his final year, something shifted. Performing awakened something electric inside him. It was as if the emotions he had long buried finally found a voice. The stage became more than performance, it became release. Still, choosing acting meant choosing uncertainty. Friends questioned his decision. Stability would vanish. There were no guarantees, no promises of success. Yet Hugh stepped into that uncertainty anyway, enrolling at the Western Australian Academy of Performing Arts. Those early years were not glamorous. He faced rejection after rejection, audition after rejection, audition after audition that ended with polite smiles and closed doors. There were moments when doubt crept in and whispered that perhaps this was foolish. Perhaps he was chasing something unreachable. He worked in small television roles in Australia, earning modest paychecks, building experience brick by brick. Success did not arrive overnight. It arrived slowly, wrapped in struggle. Then came an opportunity that carried enormous pressure. In 2000, Hugh Jackman was cast as Wolverine in the film X-Men. He was not the studio's first choice. He was brought in after another actor stepped away. Production had already begun. Expectations were high. Failure would not just be disappointing, it could end his international career before it truly began. He trained relentlessly, transforming his body through punishing workouts and extreme discipline. He pushed himself to physical limits that left him exhausted and aching. Behind the scenes, he wrestled with insecurity. Was he strong enough? Was he convincing enough? Was he worthy of this chance? The film's release changed everything. Suddenly, the world recognized his face. Wolverine became iconic, and Hugh Jackman became a global star. Yet success did not silence insecurity. It magnified it. Now he carried the weight of expectations. Each sequel demanded more muscle, more intensity, more emotional depth. He endured grueling physical regimens that sometimes bordered on dangerous, dehydrating himself for certain scenes to achieve a sculpted appearance. At times, he admitted, the process was brutal. Beyond the physical strain came a more frightening challenge. Beginning in 2013, Hugh underwent multiple procedures to remove basal cell carcinoma, a form of skin cancer, from his nose. What began as a small mark became a recurring battle. Surgery followed surgery. Scar tissue became part of his story. Publicly, he smiled and encouraged fans to wear sunscreen. Privately, he confronted the reality that even the strongest body is fragile. Facing mortality has a way of reshaping perspective. It humbles even the most celebrated figures. Then, in 2023, another deeply personal storm arrived. After 27 years of marriage, Hugh Jackman and Deborah Lee Furness announced their separation. Their relationship had long been described as one of Hollywood's most enduring partnerships. For Hugh, who often spoke about his wife as his anchor, the separation marked a profound shift. The boy who once experienced abandonment now faced another ending, this time as an adult under the scrutiny of global media. Heartbreak does not become easier simply because one is famous. If anything, it becomes more exposed. And yet, through abandonment, rejection, physical pain, illness, and personal loss, Hugh Jackman did not crumble. Each hardship seemed to deepen his empathy, sharpen his discipline, and widen his emotional range. The loneliness of Wolverine, the yearning of Jean Valjean, the dreamer's hopefulness and the greatest showman, all of it felt authentic because he had lived through uncertainty and ache. Pain did not define him, but it refined him. This is not merely the story of a man who became famous. It is the story of a child who learned resilience when stability vanished, of a young man who chose risk over safety, of an actor who faced both physical and emotional battles while standing in the public eye. Before he was a legend on screen, he was a boy learning how to survive silence, and that survival became the foundation of everything that followed. Long before Hollywood called his name, Hugh Jackman was a young man navigating uncertainty with nothing but determination and an unshakable inner drive. After graduating from the Western Australian Academy of Performing Arts in 1994, he stepped into a world that does not reward hesitation. The entertainment industry is beautiful from a distance, but up close it is relentless. Doors open slowly, if at all. Rejection becomes routine. For Hugh, those early professional years were defined not by glamour, but by grit. He began with small roles in Australian television, including the prison drama Corelli in 1995. It was not a massive global production, but it mattered. It was work. It was proof that he belonged in front of the camera. More importantly, it was on that set that he met Deborah Lee Furness, an established actress who would become the great love of his life. Their connection was immediate, grounded in humor and mutual respect. At a time when his career was fragile and uncertain, their relationship offered stability. She believed in him before the world did. They married in 1996, long before international fame arrived. But even with love anchoring him, professional pressure intensified. Hugh was ambitious, yet he refused to chase fame recklessly. He took on theater roles that demanded emotional depth and vocal strength. Stage performance is unforgiving. There are no second takes, no editing room to hide imperfections. The actor stands exposed before a live audience, vulnerable and present. Hugh thrived in that environment. His commanding physical presence combined with surprising emotional sensitivity began to distinguish him from his peers. However, self-doubt never disappeared. He has spoken openly about feeling like an outsider in the industry, especially when comparing himself to actors who had trained since childhood. There were moments when he questioned whether he truly belonged in the same space as seasoned performers. That insecurity, rather than paralyzing him, fueled preparation. He rehearsed harder, trained longer, studied scripts obsessively. Excellence became his shield against doubt. Then came 1998, when he starred in the stage production of Oklahoma in London's West End. This performance expanded his reputation beyond Australia. Critics noticed his charisma, his powerful baritone voice, his ability to carry a musical with both strength and sincerity. The boy who once wrestled silently with abandonment was now commanding international stages, yet he remained grounded, often crediting his father's disciplined upbringing for keeping his ego in check. Despite growing success, financial security was still not guaranteed. The entertainment industry can shift overnight. Actors can rise quickly and vanish just as fast. Hugh understood this instability. He had witnessed unpredictability early in life. He knew how quickly foundations can crack. That awareness made him cautious, strategic, and deeply hardworking. When the opportunity for X-Men emerged in 2000, it did not initially seem life-changing. The superhero genre had not yet exploded into the cinematic empire it would later become. The role of Wolverine required not just acting skill, but physical transformation. Hugh trained obsessively, building muscle mass and enduring exhausting regimens. The character demanded ferocity, yet also emotional restraint. Wolverine was not a simple action figure. He was wounded, haunted, searching for identity. That complexity resonated deeply with Hugh's own emotional history. The film's success catapulted him onto the global stage almost overnight. Suddenly, interviews multiplied. Red carpets replaced rehearsal halls. Magazine covers featured his face. With fame came expectation. Audiences associated him with claws and rage, and Hollywood began to see him primarily as an action star. For many actors, being boxed into a single identity can feel suffocating. Hugh feared becoming trapped in repetition. He had worked too hard to be defined by one dimension. Instead of accepting limitation, he diversified. He balanced blockbuster films with intimate dramas and theatrical returns. In 2003, he took on the demanding role of Peter Allen in The Boy from Oz on Broadway. The performance was electrifying. He sang, danced, embodied vulnerability and flamboyance with fearless commitment. It was a risk. Audiences knew him as Wolverine. But he shattered expectations. His portrayal earned him a Tony Award for Best Actor in a Musical. That victory was more than a trophy. It was validation that he was not confined to a single archetype. Yet even as his career flourished, he carried the weight of maintaining physical perfection for the X-Men franchise. The pressure to look superhuman is relentless. Training cycles became more punishing with each sequel. Diets grew stricter. Recovery time shortened. Aging does not negotiate, yet the character demanded peak physicality. Hugh pushed through injuries and exhaustion, determined not to disappoint fans. Privately, the toll was significant. The body remembers strain long after applause fades. As the years progressed, he began to reflect more openly on vulnerability. Fame can create isolation. The larger the spotlight, the harder it becomes to discern who truly sees you beyond the image. Hugh often returned to theater during these periods, grounding himself in craft rather than celebrity. On stage, applause feels earned in real time. It reconnects the performer with the art rather than the myth. Throughout this ascent, he remained deeply connected to Australia, never abandoning his roots despite international success. He frequently spoke of Sydney as home, of the beaches and familiar landscapes that shaped his childhood. That connection to origin served as a reminder that beneath global recognition stood a man shaped by ordinary beginnings and extraordinary resilience. By the mid-2000s, Hugh Jackman was no longer merely a promising actor. He was a global figure balancing multiple identities: action hero, musical performer, devoted husband, emerging producer. Yet behind each triumph lingered a quiet understanding. Success is fragile. He had learned early that stability can disappear without warning. That knowledge kept him hungry, disciplined, and emotionally aware. The rise was not a straight line of celebration. It was a steady climb built on risk, reinvention, and relentless preparation. The boy who once wondered why his mother left was now a man proving, again and again, that he could endure uncertainty and transform it into strength. And as his fame expanded, so too did the complexity of his journey. Greater opportunities awaited, but so did deeper challenges. As the world embraced Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, few truly understood the cost of wearing the claws. Fame can feel like triumph, but when tied to a single character, it can quietly become a burden. After the massive success of X-Men in 2000, Hugh was thrust into a cycle that would define nearly 2 decades of his life. Sequels followed X2 in 2003, X-Men: The Last Stand in 2006, and multiple spin-offs dedicated solely to Wolverine. With each installment, the stakes grew higher, expectations intensified, Audiences wanted more rage, more strength, more intensity. To portray Wolverine convincingly, Hugh subjected his body to extreme physical transformation. He lifted heavier weights with each film, sometimes consuming thousands of calories a day during bulking phases, then drastically reducing intake to achieve razor-sharp definition. The dehydration techniques used before shirtless scenes were particularly grueling. For nearly 36 hours at a time, he would restrict water intake, allowing his muscles to appear more sculpted on camera. It was a punishing cycle, one that demanded both physical endurance and mental resilience. Behind the scenes, the toll accumulated. Torn muscles, chronic fatigue, and joint strain became familiar companions. He was aging, yet the character required relentless physical dominance. In interviews, Hugh admitted that the preparation often consumed him. Training was no longer simply about health. It was about survival within an industry that expects superheroes to remain superhuman. He carried the pressure not only to perform, but to surpass his previous performance every single time. Yet the real weight was not only physical. Wolverine is a character shaped by trauma, isolation, and longing. He is immortal in body, but scarred in spirit. To embody that darkness repeatedly requires emotional excavation. Hugh poured his own experiences of abandonment, insecurity, and resilience into the role. That is why audiences connected so deeply with his portrayal. Beneath the growl and the claws was a man wrestling with pain. And that authenticity did not come from imagination alone, it came from lived experience. While the franchise flourished, Hugh resisted being defined solely by one identity. He deliberately sought roles that contrasted Wolverine's brutality. In films like The Prestige in 2006, he portrayed a rival magician consumed by obsession, revealing his ability to explore moral complexity. In Australia in 2008, he stepped into a sweeping romantic epic, reconnecting with his homeland on screen. These roles were not just career choices, they were statements. He was an actor of range, not merely a superhero in leather. Still, the world continued to associate him with adamantium claws. Typecasting is a silent trap in Hollywood. It can limit opportunity and shape public perception. Hugh navigated that challenge carefully, returning to theater whenever possible. Broadway became his sanctuary, a place where he could shed Wolverine's skin and reconnect with pure performance. On stage, there are no visual effects, no stunt doubles, no digital enhancements, only voice, movement, and raw presence. That authenticity grounded him. In 2012, he took on one of the most emotionally demanding roles of his career, Jean Valjean in Les Miserables. Directed by Tom Hooper, the film required actors to sing live during filming, capturing every breath and crack in their voices. For Hugh, this was both terrifying and liberating. The role demanded vulnerability on a level few blockbuster films require. Valjean's journey from prisoner to redeemed soul mirrored themes Hugh deeply understood: suffering, redemption, perseverance. His performance earned him an Academy Award nomination, solidifying his place not just as a commercial star, but as a respected dramatic actor. Yet even during these artistic triumphs, another battle quietly emerged. In 2013, doctors discovered basal cell carcinoma on his nose. The diagnosis was a shock. Years of exposure to Australia's intense sun had taken their toll. Surgery followed, then another, and another. Each procedure left a scar, a physical reminder that no one, not even a superhero, is immune to vulnerability. Hugh used his platform to advocate for sunscreen awareness, urging fans to protect themselves. Publicly, he maintained optimism. Privately, confronting cancer forces reflection. It brings mortality into sharp focus. As he continued filming Wolverine installments, including The Wolverine in 2013 and X-Men, Days of Future Past in 2014, he began to sense the end approaching. The physical demands were escalating, and he questioned how long he could realistically sustain them. Aging is a natural process, yet Hollywood often resists acknowledging it. Hugh made a bold decision. Logan in 2017 would be his final portrayal of Wolverine. Logan was not a typical superhero film. It was darker, quieter, more intimate. The character was aging, weary, wounded. There were fewer explosions and more silences. The story explored loss, legacy, and the inevitability of time. For Hugh, it felt personal. He was saying goodbye not just to a character, but to a chapter that had defined nearly half his life. When Wolverine met his end on screen, audiences felt the weight of 17 years of storytelling. It was not simply a fictional death, it was the closing of an era. The farewell was emotional. Hugh admitted that filming the final scenes left him reflective and grateful. He had grown alongside Wolverine. The character had given him global recognition, but also demanded sacrifice. Letting go required courage. Many actors cling to roles that guarantee success. Hugh chose evolution instead. By stepping away, he reclaimed creative freedom. He proved that strength is not about holding on indefinitely, but about knowing when to release. The claws that once symbolized power now symbolized closure. And in that closure, a new chapter waited. The weight of the claws had shaped him physically, emotionally, professionally, but Hugh Jackman was never meant to remain in one form forever. Beneath the muscles and myth stood a performer eager to explore deeper stories, to challenge himself beyond the expectations of fans and studios alike. And as one iconic identity faded, another transformation began to rise. When Hugh Jackman stepped away from Wolverine after Logan in 2017, many wondered what would come next. For nearly 2 decades, the character had been inseparable from his identity. Yet behind the muscles and myth was a man who had always been more than the roles he played. As the claws were set aside, the spotlight shifted, and what emerged was not a fading star, but a fuller portrait of a human being navigating life beyond a singular legacy. By this stage in his life, Hugh was not just an actor. He was a husband of over 20 years, a father to 2 adopted children, and a man deeply invested in the idea of family. He and Deborah Lee Furness had adopted their son Oscar in 2000 and their daughter Ava in 2005. Fatherhood, he often said, changed him in ways fame never could. Holding his children for the first time reshaped his priorities. Success, awards, and box office numbers became secondary to bedtime stories and school events. He once described parenting as the most humbling and grounding experience of his life. It softened him, expanded him, and reminded him daily that identity is not defined by public perception. Even as he balanced family life, his artistic ambitions continued to evolve. In 2017, he starred in The Greatest Showman, portraying P.T. Barnum, a dreamer determined to create spectacle from imagination. The film was initially met with mixed critical reception, but audiences embraced it wholeheartedly. Its music, particularly This Is Me, became an anthem of self-acceptance and empowerment. For Hugh, the project felt deeply personal. It celebrated outsiders, individuality, and resilience, themes that echoed his own journey from uncertainty to confidence. Watching arenas filled with fans singing those songs back to him during live tours was a reminder that art can unite strangers through shared emotion. Yet amid professional triumph, life rarely moves in straight lines. The years following Logan were marked by introspection. With the physical demands of Wolverine behind him, Hugh had more time to reflect on his own well-being. He continued undergoing treatments for recurring basal cell carcinoma, each procedure reinforcing the fragility of the body. The scars on his nose were subtle but symbolic. They were reminders that strength does not mean invincibility. He also began speaking more openly about mental health and vulnerability. In interviews, he admitted that he has wrestled with anxiety and self-doubt throughout his career. The image of confidence that the world saw was often supported by intense preparation and internal dialogue. He acknowledged that imposter syndrome, feeling undeserving of success, never fully disappears. Instead of hiding these admissions, he embraced them, offering honesty in an industry that often favors perfection over truth. Then, in 2023, another deeply personal turning point arrived. After 27 years of marriage, Hugh and Deborah Lee announced their separation. Their statement was measured and respectful. emphasizing gratitude for the life they had built together. Yet behind that public composure was undeniable heartbreak. A relationship that had anchored him since his early career was transforming. For a man whose childhood was marked by the departure of his mother, endings carry profound emotional weight. This was not scandal-driven drama. It was the quiet unraveling of a shared chapter. Navigating such change under global scrutiny is uniquely challenging. Every appearance becomes analyzed, every smile interpreted. Yet Hugh maintained dignity and discretion, choosing privacy over spectacle. Those close to him described him as reflective, focused on growth rather than blame. It was another evolution proof that even long-standing foundations can shift, and that maturity lies in facing change without bitterness. Professionally, he continued seeking projects that stretched him creatively. He explored producing, investing in businesses, and supporting philanthropic causes. His coffee company, Laughing Man Coffee, reflected his commitment to social impact, sourcing beans ethically and supporting farming communities. It was more than a brand. It was a statement about responsibility and gratitude. Success, to Hugh, had to mean more than accumulation. It had to mean contribution. Through all of this, he remained deeply connected to his Australian roots. Despite residing part-time in the United States, he often returned to Sydney, grounding himself in the familiar rhythms of home. The beaches, the open sky, the accent that never fully faded, these were reminders of where it all began. Fame had expanded his world, but it had not erased his origin. As he moved into his mid-50s, conversations around aging became more prominent. Unlike Wolverine, Hugh could not defy time. Instead of resisting it, he embraced the transition. He began prioritizing health over extreme physical transformation. He spoke about balance, about longevity, about redefining what strength means in later chapters of life. It was no longer about proving invulnerability. It was about sustaining vitality with wisdom. What becomes clear in this stage of his journey is that Hugh Jackman's story is not one of linear ascent, but of continuous transformation. Each chapter, abandonment, ambition, superstardom, health battles, personal change, has added dimension rather than diminishing him. The man behind the spotlight is thoughtful, disciplined, compassionate, and remarkably self-aware. The world often celebrates his performances, but perhaps his greatest performance is authenticity. The willingness to acknowledge pain, growth, and uncertainty without losing hope. He has faced public success and private struggle with equal grace. He has allowed himself to evolve without clinging to outdated versions of identity. And as new opportunities continue to emerge, one truth stands steady. Hugh Jackman's greatest strength is not the character he once played, nor the accolades he has earned. It is his capacity to adapt, to confront vulnerability without surrendering dignity, and to keep stepping forward even when chapters close. The spotlight may illuminate him, but it does not define him. There is a certain silence that follows departure. When Hugh Jackman closed the chapter on Wolverine with Logan, many believed they had witnessed the final image of a man who had carried a cultural icon for nearly 2 decades. It felt definitive. It felt complete. But life rarely respects the boundaries we draw around it. Reinvention has always been Hugh's quiet superpower, and just when the world assumed his path was set, he began reshaping it again. After The Greatest Showman became a global phenomenon, Hugh embarked on a world tour titled The Man, the Music, the Show. Night after night, arenas filled with thousands of voices singing along to songs that celebrated courage and belonging. Unlike film sets hidden behind cameras and edits, these performances were immediate and exposed. Sweat, breath, voice, nothing filtered. For Hugh, standing on stage with a live orchestra and audience offered something profoundly human. It reconnected him to the raw electricity that first drew him to acting in university. The applause was not for a character in costume, but for the man himself. Yet, even in celebration, time moves forward. The entertainment industry is relentless, constantly asking what comes next. You understood that sustaining relevance requires risk. He pursued projects that challenged expectations, including dramatic roles that required restraint rather than spectacle. In 2022, he starred in The Sun, a psychological drama exploring family conflict and mental health. The role demanded subtlety, emotional tension, and the willingness to sit with discomfort. It was a reminder that beneath blockbuster fame lies a performer eager to explore complexity. Physically, he continued maintaining disciplined training, though no longer to the punishing extremes of his early Wolverine years. Age brings wisdom as well as limitation. He spoke candidly about respecting his body rather than forcing it into impossible standards. There is dignity in adaptation, and recognizing that growth sometimes means releasing old expectations. Then, in a moment that stunned fans worldwide, Hugh announced he would reprise his role as Wolverine once more in the upcoming Deadpool project, alongside Ryan Reynolds. The decision sparked excitement, curiosity, even skepticism. Hadn't Logan been the perfect farewell? For Hugh, the return was not about undoing closure, but about embracing a new context. The tone would be different, the narrative fresh. It was not regression. It was evolution. Returning to Wolverine now meant revisiting the character with maturity, humor, and a deeper understanding of legacy. Behind the scenes, preparing again for the role required renewed dedication. Training intensified. Diets sharpened. The familiar rhythm of transformation resurfaced, yet this time there was perspective. Hugh was no longer a young actor proving himself. He was a seasoned artist revisiting a part of his history with awareness and choice. That difference matters. It transforms obligation into intention. At the same time, the personal landscape of his life continued shifting. Following his separation from Deborah Lee, Hugh entered a phase of reflection. Long-term relationships leave imprints that do not vanish overnight. There were reports of solitude, quiet days spent focusing on children, work, and self-care. Change, especially after decades of partnership, can feel destabilizing. Yet Hugh approached this chapter not with public drama, but with measured calm. He emphasized gratitude for shared years rather than dwelling on endings. That grace resonated deeply with those who admired him. Philanthropy remained central to his identity. Through the Laughing Man Foundation, he continued supporting education, entrepreneurship, and fair trade initiatives. Success, for Hugh, has never been solely about personal advancement. He has consistently sought to channel opportunity toward uplifting others. This commitment reflects the values instilled by his father: hard work, integrity, responsibility. Public perception often paints celebrities as larger-than-life figures immune to ordinary struggles. Hugh's story dismantles that illusion. He has faced abandonment, professional doubt, physical strain, cancer scares, and the unraveling of a long marriage. Yet none of these chapters reduced him. Instead, they layered him. Each scar, visible or invisible, contributed to a more textured human being. As the years unfold, his legacy becomes less about individual roles and more about character, both the fictional ones he portrayed and the personal character he embodies. Colleagues frequently describe him as generous on set, attentive to crew members, respectful to collaborators. In an industry where ego can dominate, humility stands out. Reinvention requires courage because it demands stepping into uncertainty once again. Hugh has done this repeatedly, leaving secure paths, challenging typecasting, confronting vulnerability publicly. Whether singing on Broadway, wielding claws on screen, or speaking openly about mental health, he has refused to shrink into predictability. There is something profoundly human about watching someone evolve without losing authenticity. Hugh Jackman's journey reminds us that identity is not fixed. It expands, contracts, shifts with experience. The boy who once waited at a window for his mother's return has become a man capable of standing alone without fear. Not hardened, but strengthened. Not cynical, but wiser. And as he prepares once more to step into a role that defined an era, he does so not as a desperate grasp for past glory, but as an artist honoring history while embracing the present. That distinction transforms nostalgia into purpose. The story is far from over. There comes a moment in every life when applause grows quieter and reflection grows louder. For Hugh Jackman, that moment did not arrive as a dramatic collapse or public scandal. It arrived gradually, through hospital rooms, through medical appointments, through the sterile scent of surgical procedures that reminded him how fragile even the strongest body can be. Beginning in 2013, doctors discovered basal cell carcinoma on his nose, a form of skin cancer often caused by years of sun exposure. Growing up under Australia's powerful sun had etched memories into his childhood, but it had also etched invisible damage into his skin. What started as a small, irregular mark turned into a recurring health battle. Surgery followed surgery. Each time, he reassured the public that it was manageable. Each time, he encouraged fans to protect themselves. But behind the camera flashes and reassuring smiles was a man confronting his own vulnerability. Cancer, even in its less aggressive forms, shifts perspective. It forces confrontation with mortality. It reminds a person that time is not infinite, that strength does not guarantee permanence. For someone who had built an image around physical dominance and heroic resilience, this quiet, recurring illness carried symbolic weight. The scars were small, but they spoke loudly. They were proof that beneath the cinematic myth lived an ordinary human body, subject to ordinary risks. Yet Hugh refused to let fear define him. Instead, he transformed it into advocacy. He used interviews and social media to speak openly about skin checks and sunscreen. There was no vanity in hiding procedures. He showed bandages. He acknowledged anxiety. That transparency deepened public respect for him. It dismantled the illusion that strength means silence. Strength, in his case, meant honesty. As the physical reminders accumulated, so did emotional introspection. Approaching his mid-50s, Hugh began speaking about purpose beyond performance. Success had long ago been secured. Awards, recognition, financial stability, those boxes were checked. The deeper question became, what now? What remains meaningful when ambition has already been fulfilled? The answer seemed rooted in connection. Time with his children became sacred. He has often described fatherhood as the role that matters most. Watching them grow, guiding them through adolescence, offering presence rather than presence. These became priorities. In a world where schedules can dominate every waking hour, choosing presence is a deliberate act. Professionally, he continued selecting roles that resonated emotionally rather than commercially. He explored characters wrestling with family tension, internal conflict, and aging. These were not loud performances designed for spectacle. They were nuanced explorations of humanity. It was as though he was peeling away layers of persona, revealing something quieter, more contemplative. And then, as personal life shifted with the end of his long marriage, reflection deepened further. Ending a 27-year partnership is not simply a change in relationship status. It is a redefinition of daily existence. Shared routines vanish. Familiar rhythms dissolve. Hugh approached this chapter without bitterness, emphasizing gratitude for shared history rather than assigning blame. That maturity did not eliminate sadness, but it framed it within dignity. Observers noted a subtle transformation in his public demeanor during this period. There was still warmth, still charisma, but also a thoughtful restraint. The energy of constant proving seemed to soften into acceptance. He no longer needed to demonstrate worth through relentless output. He had already built a legacy. Now he was shaping a life. Even his return to Wolverine carried different emotional weight. It was not fueled by insecurity or obligation. It was chosen. That distinction matters profoundly. Choice reflects freedom. Early in his career, opportunities felt like lifelines that could not be risked. Now, decisions came from a place of autonomy. He could say yes or no without fear of disappearing. That confidence signals a man comfortable with himself. Through illness, separation, and reinvention, Hugh Jackman's narrative has become less about external triumph and more about internal evolution. The world may remember the claws, the musicals, the awards, but the quieter victories are perhaps more significant. the willingness to confront mortality without denial, the courage to navigate heartbreak without spectacle, the discipline to adapt physically without chasing impossible standards. In many ways, he has stepped beyond the archetype of a traditional movie star. He embodies a blend of resilience and vulnerability rarely displayed so openly. His journey illustrates that adversity does not arrive once and disappear. It revisits, reshapes, redefines. What distinguishes him is not the absence of hardship, but his response to it. And as he continues moving forward, father, performer, advocate, evolving individual, there is a sense that his greatest chapters may not revolve around a single role or headline. They revolve around meaning, around understanding that fame is fleeting but integrity endures. The boy who once stood at a window waiting for someone to return has become a man who no longer waits for validation. He builds it within himself. As years gather quietly around a life, legacy begins to take shape, not as a sudden monument, but as a mosaic formed from countless moments. For Hugh Jackman, legacy is no longer just a conversation about box office numbers or iconic roles. It is about influence, integrity, and the emotional imprint left on audiences across generations. When people speak of him today, they do not speak only of Wolverine's ferocity or Jean Valjean's trembling plea for redemption. They speak of consistency, of professionalism, of kindness on set. Crew members who worked alongside him often describe a man who learns the names of lighting technicians, who thanks assistants personally, who understands that filmmaking is a collective effort rather than a solo performance. In an industry that can inflate egos beyond recognition, humility becomes a rare currency. Hugh has protected that humility carefully, perhaps because he understands how quickly circumstances can change. His contribution to cinema extends beyond genre. Few actors manage to bridge blockbuster action films and Broadway musicals with equal credibility. He has inhabited worlds of fantasy, historical drama, romance, satire, and psychological realism. This range ensures that his work will not be confined to a single era or audience. Children who discovered him through superhero films grow older and rediscover him in musicals. Theater lovers encounter him on stage and later recognize him in cinema. His artistry crosses generational boundaries. Beyond performance, his philanthropic efforts have quietly strengthened his legacy. Through the Laughing Man Foundation, he has invested in education and fair trade initiatives, ensuring that coffee farmers receive equitable compensation. While such endeavors may not command the same headlines as film premieres, they reflect a deeper understanding of responsibility. Wealth and influence, in his view, carry obligation. He has often said that gratitude demands action. As cultural conversations around masculinity evolve, Hugh's public persona contributes meaningfully to that dialogue. He presents strength without aggression, success without arrogance, emotion without embarrassment. In interviews, he laughs easily, admits fear openly, and speaks affectionately about family. For many admirers, this balance offers a refreshing alternative to outdated stereotypes. He demonstrates that power and tenderness are not opposites, they coexist. The evolution of his career also illustrates the importance of reinvention. Rather than clinging desperately to a single identity, he has repeatedly stepped into unfamiliar territory. That willingness to risk discomfort sustains longevity. It sends a message to aspiring performers that growth requires courage and that fear of failure should not dictate artistic choices. Even his health struggles, once private concerns, have become part of his public advocacy. By discussing skin cancer treatments candidly, he normalized medical vigilance. He reminded fans that vigilance is not weakness. Each visible scar became part of a larger narrative about accountability to one's own body. And then there is the cultural memory of Logan, the farewell that resonated far beyond comic book fandom. That film did something rare. It allowed a superhero to age, to weaken, to confront mortality. In doing so, it mirrored the human condition. Hugh's portrayal ensured that Wolverine was not immortal in spirit, only in myth. The vulnerability displayed in that performance cemented his place not merely as an action star, but as an actor willing to embrace fragility. As he prepares once again to revisit the character in a new context, anticipation blends with curiosity. Audiences wonder how time has reshaped both man and role. Yet regardless of future outcomes, his legacy is secure. It rests not on a single performance, but on sustained excellence and authenticity. Looking back at the arc of his life, from a child grappling with abandonment to a global figure navigating fame, illness, heartbreak, and reinvention, the pattern becomes clear. Hardship did not interrupt his journey. It informed it. Each obstacle deepened empathy. Each triumph carried gratitude. Legacy, ultimately, is not defined by perfection. It is defined by resilience paired with humanity. Hugh Jackman's story embodies both. He has shown that vulnerability can coexist with strength, that success does not eliminate struggle, and that endings often lead to transformation rather than decline. The curtain has not yet fallen. There are more roles to play, more songs to sing, more quiet mornings to experience away from cameras, but already the narrative stands complete in one essential way. It tells of a man who refused to let early wounds dictate his destiny, who chose growth over stagnation, and who continues to evolve with grace. And as audiences revisit his films or hear his voice echo across a stage, they are not merely witnessing entertainment. They are witnessing the culmination of endurance, discipline, and heart. In the end, when all the roles are set aside and the lights dim softly over a career that has stretched across continents and decades, what remains is not the roar of a crowd or the shimmer of an award. What remains is the quiet story of a boy who stayed. Hugh Michael Jackman was born in 1968 in Sydney, Australia, into a life that would test him early. At 8 years old, when his mother left and returned to England, he could have folded inward. He could have allowed absence to define him. But instead, he stayed. He stayed with his father. He stayed with his siblings. He stayed with the ache,